Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. Day 343 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine's ambassador to Germany, Alexei Makeyev, has indicated that Kiev wants to begin discussions on restoring its nuclear status. Meanwhile, United States President Joe Biden has indicated that he intends to visit Poland. A trilateral option for talks in Warsaw is under consideration, with President Volodymyr Zelensky possibly joining the meeting between the American delegation and President Andrzej Duda. Russian forces have been pushing into Bakhmut for weeks, but Ukrainian resistance has prevented them from taking the city. Among those fighting on Kiev's side are 4 battalions from Chechnya, Ingushetia, Georgia, Chechnya, and finally Ukraine. We all know what happened in these lands. Now Ukrainian children, women and soldiers are dying every day in the name of their country's independence. This is what the Russian mir looks like. This is the price they pay at the cost of their own lives. This is a high price for the so-called peaceful resolution of the conflict. Meanwhile, Kiev is close to completing preparations for Friday's Ukraine-EU summit. The EU is sympathetic to Ukraine's membership of the European Union. All of Ukraine and its partners are making every effort to ensure that Russia suffers a final defeat on the battlefield. Our goal is also for the occupying power to lose all hope of the possibility of a rematch and the desire for further attempts at aggression. Russia's defeat will make a lasting peace possible. Russia is preparing for a new offensive. To this end, Moscow is mobilizing more than 200,000 troops and importing weapons and ammunition by buying them in bulk from its partners. The Kremlin's criminal aggression against Ukraine, according to NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, poses a threat to the security of the entire world.
Beijing is watching closely and learning lessons that may influence its future decisions. What is happening in Europe today could happen in East Asia tomorrow. So we must remain united and firm, standing together for freedom and democracy.
Meanwhile, the United States arms industry company General Atomics wants to donate 2 Reaper combat drones to Ukraine for the symbolic sum of $1. The Pentagon is also preparing a new military aid package worth more than $2 billion. The United States is to transfer long-range missiles to Ukraine for the first time. Details will be announced later this week. So that the Ukrainians could effectively cut the Crimean corridor, that is, the connection between mainland Russia and the occupied peninsula. In fact, the whole logic of the Ukrainian counteroffensive is that Russia's logistical routes are simply cut for several weeks before the mechanized columns enter. The United States is pursuing a measured policy not to escalate the war in Ukraine. Therefore, the government in Washington is restrained in transferring offensive weapons. President Joe Biden has refused to send F-16 aircraft to Kiev. Meanwhile, Ukrainian Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov believes that a final decision on the matter has not yet been made. France is sympathetic to Ukraine, but the final decision lies with the Americans. Our military doctrine is clear. There is no taboo on the delivery of aircraft to Ukraine. Minister Alexei Reznikov came here with a clear goal. We want to learn about the needs of the Ukrainian military, of which aviation is a part. France's decision was a leading one in terms of recent tank deliveries to Ukraine. It came through the transfer of RC AMX-10 light tanks. When Ukraine ousts the Russians from its territory, Kiev's priority will be to try Russian war criminals. Bucha, Borodyanka and Irpin are towns on which the Russian atrocities have been imprinted with exceptional brutality. An international scientific conference began today in Berlin. Experts discussed the establishment of a proper criminal tribunal to try the guilty. Today this has to be stopped, because here everyone understands perfectly well that this Russian imperialism and Russian bestiality has never been clearly judged, that the free world was unfortunately not interested in it. Today it is interested in the question of judgment, but it takes a weak interest. It has been almost a year since the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine began. Since then, Kiev has registered more than 34,000 crimes related to Russian aggression. President Andrzej Duda and his wife have been on a state visit to Latvia since yesterday. Today he met Latvian President Egils Levitis. The main topics of conversation included issues related to the war in Ukraine and the strengthening of NATO's eastern flank.
Our action within NATO is first and foremost a preventive action. It is first and foremost deterrence. I emphasize this very strongly. This is a policy of deterrence. We, by strengthening the NATO presence here, by strengthening it both in terms of personnel, that is by having a larger presence of allied soldiers, but also by increasing the military infrastructure capacity that is in our countries, we are preventing an attack. In this way, we discourage a potential attacker by showing that it is not worthwhile to attack our country, because an attack will be very costly and will simply be repulsed. This is what this policy serves. This is what we are implementing with the president, and this is also what we want to get at the next NATO summit. which will be in Vilnius. We have always had the same awareness and understanding security issues, and today the issue of security was the main topic of today's talks. We talked about how we can help and continue to help Ukraine in its fight for its statehood, for its independence and freedom, because at the same time, Ukrainians are fighting for us, for Poland, for Latvia, for all of Europe, but I would also say for the whole Western world. And for us, it is a responsibility to do everything possible to help Ukraine in this fight and to help win this fight.
Early today, up to 500,000 British teachers, civil servants and train drivers walked out over pay in the largest coordinated strike action for a decade, with unions threatening more disruption as the government digs its heels in over pay demands. The mass walkouts across the country shut schools, halted most rail services and forced the military to be put on standby to help with border checks on a day dubbed Walkout Wednesday. According to trade unions, as many as 300,000 teachers took part, the biggest group involved, as part of a wider action by 500,000 people, the highest number since 2011, when civil servants walked out en masse. Tens of thousands of education workers marched through central London with placards which read, "Children deserve better" and "Save our schools, pay up."
Teachers are striking in England and Wales today because there has been, over the last 12 years, a really catastrophic long-term decline in their pay. Teachers have lost 13% over that period. That's, in real terms, a huge amount to lose. And that is causing a recruitment and retention crisis in our schools. So schools can't get teachers and teachers aren't staying in the profession. That's a toxic combination of overwork and underpay. So teachers are saying very reluctantly, none of the people behind me wants to be on strike today, but they are saying very reluctantly that enough is enough and that things have to change.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak condemned the strikes which forced millions of children to miss school. His government has taken a hard line against the unions, arguing that giving in to demands for huge wage hikes would further fuel Britain's inflation problem.
Rishi Sunak, hear us say, we need you to raise our pay.
What do we want?
10%.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
10%.
When do we want it?
Now.
The PCS union, representing about 100,000 striking civil servants from more than 120 government departments, warned of further coordinated strikes. With inflation running at more than 10%, the highest level in 4 decades, Britain has seen a wave of strikes in recent months across the public and private sectors, including health and transport workers, Amazon warehouse employees, and Royal Mail postal staff.
Yes, well, we're here on the steps of the Treasury, bringing a message to the heart of government that the government's own workers are on strike, 100,000 of us across the UK, because civil servants have had the lowest pay increase anywhere in our economy, 2% pay rise when inflation is running in double digits and people have had enough and we're on strike for more money.
I think it's simple. I think these disputes could be resolved. All people want is, enough money to pay the bills. People want often just a contract so that they can live with dignity and security. These are not big asks of what is, the 6th, 7th richest nation in the world. And it's certainly not big asks from a government who seems to, look the other way when millionaires aren't filing their tax returns.
I'm very curious to see if anything changes, but I don't know at what point the government is actually going to do anything about it. I feel like COVID has broken a lot of people and now the fallout is just no one's listening to anyone. I feel like the communication's off.
I think it's very sad that we got to this state that we're having to have people sort of on strike and not being able to work.
I've got family that sort of ambulance workers and nurses and I don't think it's about money. I think it's lack of funding more than anything. I think they're upset because people are just leaving because, the sort of working hours are so bad and the working conditions are so bad. So need a change.
The strikers are demanding above-inflation pay rises to cover rocketing food and energy bills that they say have left them struggling to make ends meet. Next week, nurses, ambulance staff, paramedics, emergency call handlers and other healthcare workers are set to stage more walkouts, while firefighters this week have also backed a nationwide strike. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.